Hi, this is Walter and Pat Boyer from Bookends in Ridgewood, New Jersey. We're really excited tonight to help Turk Pipkin, who is the co-author of Willie Nelson's Letters to America. The book is actually going on sale tomorrow. Some of you may have seen the actual interview with Willie. There's Turk, there's Greg. I'm going to talk about them in a moment. But Willie was on Jimmy Fallon on Friday night.
Yes.
For those, I'm sure you can YouTube it, but it was a great interview about the book. But we're really excited tonight. Greg's been with us now, I think, for about a dozen of these Zoom webinars. Greg is an expert in scaling and growing early stage product companies in the nutritional supplements industry and works with numerous professional athletes and celebrities as brand ambassadors and influencers. And I should mention before I introduce Turk, we will be doing a live Q&A at the end of this for the last 10 minutes. For those of you who have done this before, if you click on the Q&A button, just type in your question and we'll hopefully get to it. In addition to that, we will be offering two lucky purchasers tonight a signed copy. Willie was kind enough to sign a couple copies, and Turk will help in that. There's only, I think, 10 of those copies in the United States. We were able to get 2 of them, so thank you, Turk. Thank you, Willie. Just as a background, Turk is a writer and filmmaker. He's the director of 3 feature documentaries and the co-founder of the global education and conservative nonprofit, the Nobility Project. As an actor, he's known for his recurring roles in HBO's The Sopranos and The Leftovers, and for numerous feature films, including Friday Night Lights, The Alamo, and Waiting for Guffman. He's also an author of a dozen fiction and nonfiction books, including When Angels Sing, which became the feature film Angels Sing, and the New York Times bestseller, The Tao of Willie, co-authored by Turk and American music legend Willie Nelson. His latest book is another collaboration with his friend Willie Nelson, Willie Nelson's Letters to America, which will be published by Harper on June 29th. Greg, Turk, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Pat. And as always, again, we just want to remind everyone, until we get back to a situation when we're able to handle doing these Q&As in person, hopefully we're not that far out. Please support Bookends. If you listen to the recorded version of this, you can order the book at bookends-.com, and let's take it away. So Turk, first question. With regards to your previous book with Willie, tell me a little bit about your friendship with Willie, what the inspiration behind that book was, and how you arrived at writing this book.
Great to be here. Thank you, Greg. The Tao of Willie, or the Tao of Willie, depending on how you pronounce that, or as Willie called it, the Toe of Willie, first book we did together, and although we have worked together on a lot of projects over the years, but Willie has really been a mentor to me, both in, I think, in a lot of ways. I've known him for 40 years, and we've, now we've written 2 books together, but we've made quite a few movies together. We've done a lot of television together. We played a lot of golf and poker and chess. And I'm a firm believer that he is probably the smartest guy I ever met in my life. And I know a lot of smart people. There's 12 Nobel laureates in my films for Nobility, for our nonprofit that you mentioned. And the Tao Willie was just kind of a way to sort of get at that nature of why is Willie so magical, which is a hard thing to get at. And I feel like we did a really good job. But with the new book, with Willie's Letters to America, we had a couple of things happening. One, this started during the shutdown for the pandemic, and we both had a lot of time on our hands. And I had been thinking for a long time, I'd known that Willie had been a letter writer when he was younger, and still an emailer and a texter, and it seemed like the idea of writing those letters, either seeing some he'd written long ago or writing the letters he always wanted to write, would make for a perfect book. And he jumped at the idea, and we wrote this book literally by text and email and phone calls. We never saw each other until we traded our finished manuscripts.
Outstanding, outstanding. And what's wonderful about this book is you could pick it up anywhere and find a passage, and some of these are incredibly moving. So it's a great book. It's a very quick and easy read, but there are passages there that really do take it to your soul in terms of Willie's passion for writing and yours in terms of co-authoring this book.
Yeah, I mean, I think the film lends itself, to what we're doing, and it's not just the letters. There's, as we say up front, there's some introductory sections which kind of run the arc of Willie's life, which explain who the people are the letters are to, or other things that Willie, cares about that just kind of fill out and enliven the book. And there's a lot of bad jokes, which is an important component of the Willie Nelson I know and love. We don't say good jokes, the bad jokes. That's what makes them good jokes.
That's right. That's right. So in your past, in terms of your acting career, which is quite impressive, your time on The Sopranos.
I should have started the interview. I played Aaron Arkaway. Sorry if I cut you off there, but probably should have started the interview, in nap mode, because Aaron Arkaway, my character, obviously was Janice's boyfriend on The Sopranos, and in addition to being a born-again Christian, was also a narcoleptic, because apparently one of those wasn't going to be memorable enough. And I think every scene I had in the movie, I basically either woke up or fell asleep. Almost every scene in the scene. Really great experience. And so anytime I'm doing something with Jersey, it's always special for me, because there's a lot of Sopranos fans in New Jersey.
Oh yeah, they actually have a Sopranos con, and hundreds of people come out over a 3-day period. So New Jerseyans love the Sopranos, and love the romantic part of that whole genre. So with regards to Sopranos, did you have an opportunity to, I don't recall if you acted with James Gandolfini, had any scenes with him, any memories of him, or other members of the cast?
Lots of great memories with Jimmy and all the cast. Mostly the family cast, not as much with the other wise guys, because I was Janet's boyfriend. I'm the only Janet's boyfriend who survived. Everybody else got whacked. And Jimmy, I don't know, everything I could tell you about Jimmy is amazing. I mean, the very first day I worked on the show, we're rehearsing a scene where it's Thanksgiving and we're watching television, and I'm on the sofa next to Jimmy. His stand-in, who's a big guy like Jimmy was, is sitting there, and I'm sitting in the middle, and the rest of us are there, and we're watching a football game, but they're doing lighting and blocking, all the usual things. And it's quite a long time. Well, I'm playing a narcoleptic. I'm supposed to look sleepy. So basically, I haven't slept for a day and a half. I've been in New York having fun. And so they were like, just stay there while we do the lighting. And I said, great. I just put my head down and was pretending to be asleep. And then the big stand-in was there, and I said to the director, I said, hey, would it be okay, or would Jimmy be okay, if while I was sleeping in the scene, if my head just kind of fell over on Jimmy's shoulder? And basically, if I started drooling on him. And David Chase is very specific about every word in that script, every line, direction. You don't improvise on The Sopranos. One of the reasons it was so brilliant. And so they ran it up to the top and then came back and said, yeah, we think that'd be okay. Let's see what it looks like. So I put my head over on the stand-in shoulder anyway. To cut to the end of the chase, it all looked good and everybody was laughing. And then I put my head back, and basically, I think I was asleep. And they said, okay, we're ready to roll. Turk, you awake? I was like, yes, I am. I'm ready. And I heard Jimmy say, hang on 1 second. And I opened my eyes and looked, and well, I wasn't leaning on the stand-in shoulder anymore. I basically met James Gandolfini as I was drooling on his shoulder. He said, hey, I'm Jimmy. Before we roll, I thought I'd say hi. But we had a great time together. I don't know. It's get me crying if I start thinking about it too much. And I think that's the case of almost anybody who worked on the show. He was a fantastic guy.
Yeah, sadly, the anniversary of his passing was about 10, 12 days ago. Time flies. It's 7 years already.
I asked Jimmy one time on set, he would go, you know, his home, of course, there is a home that they shot at with the swimming pool with the ducks, but they also had the interiors were built on the soundstage at Silver Queens, at Silver, what is it, studio in Queens. Anyway, there's a big backdrop out there for the pool, and Jimmy would, during a break, he would go on the back porch of the fake house, and he would sit there on the soundstage and smoke a big Cuban cigar. And I walked out there one day and said, what does it take to get to smoke a cigar with you in the house, out here on the porch of the house? Of course, this is on the soundstage, it's just completely illegal. And Jimmy said, you're the first person who's asked. So we started smoking cigars on the set. Everybody else was looking at me like, why does he get to smoke a cigar with Gandolfini? I asked.
That's right. Sometimes if you don't ask, you don't get.
So I'll segue into the Willie. I met Willie 40 years ago. I was his opening act at an outdoor concert with a huge crowd in Austin, Texas, where I live and where he was living and still lives. And a big outdoor crowd, and the crowd was at the height of Willie's rock star, country star, outlaw popularity. Crowd was, as soon as I finished my act, I mean, to the second, it was applause. Willie, Willie. And I walked off stage and the promoter said, you got to go back out there and do 10 more minutes. I said, they will kill me. I'm not going back out there. And I said, where's Willie? And they said, he hadn't come off his bus. And I said, I'll take care of that. That's how I met Willie. I went down and banged on the door of the bus. Within about a second of me banging on the door opened, and it was Willie standing there saying, what? I said, I think they're ready for you to go on stage. And he said, I was wondering when they were going to come get me. So sometimes you got to bang on the door of the bus.
That's right. That's right. One of the things that I find so remarkable about Willie, even at this stage of his career, besides this amazing book, this year he released a CD of Sinatra standards, and it seems as if he comes out with at least a couple of CDs or albums every year. He did one with his sons during the pandemic.
2 to 4 a year.
Amazing.
It's incredible. I mean, that's actually his second Sinatra tribute album. And I loved the first one, but I think I like this one even better, which for an 80-year-old, it was only 87 when he recorded it. He was a youngster, but it's pretty amazing that you can sing those songs and bring something great to it at that age. But he has always told me that, you know, I started asking him, I wrote magazine stories about Willie from time to time, and because he would be kind and let me do that. And he'd always told me, you know, people would say, when are you going to retire? He always said, all I do is play golf and sing. Which one do you want me to give up? He doesn't play as much golf anymore, but not singing this last year was misery for him. You know, he really missed being on the road. But I don't know, it's extraordinary that at 88, he's out there, he's got a whole tour, a big outlaw music tour starting in a month. So Willie will be back on the road again. His first gig's actually in Austin at his ranch, Luck, Texas, which we write about in the book. He's doing 3 nights out there with Willie and his boys, Willie and Family Band and his boys in July. Those were hard tickets to come by.
And what's also remarkable, because I've got a ton of his CDs, is the different genres of music. I mean, he's done blues, obviously he's done country, he's done rock. And then to do Sinatra standards with a big band, I mean, who's capable of doing that, truly?
Yeah, hardly anybody. And he has a reggae album, which is pretty amazing, which they actually recorded in Jamaica, a lot of it. And you can know what was going on while they were recording that album in Jamaica.
I have a pretty good idea. Yeah, I mean, the only other person that comes to mind is Linda Ronstadt, who, you know, dabbled in those different genres. But Willie's done it, and he's not only done it, but he's done it with giants in those areas, like Sinatra, like B.B. King, and others. It's just remarkable.
Has a song out with Barbra Streisand. This just came out last week on her new album. He has a duet with Barbara.
I think I read that.
Yeah.
I think I read that.
Go figure. But I don't know. Willie, it's there's something going on with Willie that's not going on with anybody else. And you know, I think we said in the book, I might be paraphrasing, but I think we said you know, people say that every time somebody smokes a cigarette, it adds a year to Keith Richards' life. Our theory is every time somebody smokes a joint, it adds a day to Willie's life. He tells Mark, his manager, who lives not too far from where you guys are at, he tells Mark in the book, you know, thank you for the beautiful 60th, the big 60, his 60th birthday celebration, which my wife and I were part of the team that made that project with incredible B.B. King and Ray Charles and Bonnie Raitt, and Ringo Starr. It was just an incredible experience. And he said, thank you, Mark, for putting that together. And then you did it again for my 70th, and you did it for my 80th. And every one of them was great. And you better be well along with planning for my 90th. And I suggest you start now on thinking about what you're going to do for my 100th. You know, I
It'll probably be him and Keith
Really
Richards
100th
together,
birthday
you know, playing together at that one. I wouldn't doubt it. So, question for you about Waiting for Guffman. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize, and I think it's sort of gained some traction now with the popularity of Schitt's Creek on Netflix with Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, is that there was a whole series of movies that that relationship sort of stemmed from. So could you share some memories of that film? I love that movie.
Well, Guffman shot in Austin, where I live, and my friend Harry Anderson, I know a lot of people there remember Harry, the magician and the actor from Cheers and Night Court and Dave's World. Harry and I were partners, performing and writing partners for, well, Harry passed away now. It's been about 4 years. So since we met in 1974 until 4 years ago. Anyway, Harry was friends with Christopher Guest, and I'd never met him before. And Christopher Guest was coming to Austin to shoot Guffman, and Harry saw him and said, "Oh, you should get my friend Turk Pipkin to audition. He'd be funny in the movie." So I got a call from him saying, "Would you come to an audition? I mean, we're not really familiar with your work." And I went down, and you know, it's as short as I'm in the trailer longer than I'm in the movie. I think I'm juggling ping pong balls out of my mouth, and all these scenes were improvised, like most of those movies were. And I had a couple of days on the set only if we're Waiting for Guffman, but it was a blast. I mean, you're hanging out with Christopher Guest and Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy. It's like, how can you go wrong? And the scene was pretty funny. So I don't know. People still talk about it. But those guys are hilarious, and there are some other really long-lived careers among that group. And you know, funny. I think people who are funny, Willie's a very funny person. People who are funny tend to something good about being funny, and enjoying life helps you live longer.
I agree. Did you have the opportunity to work at all with Fred Willard, who we lost last year?
Yeah, Fred was working that scene, and Fred was really close friends. Harry and I had said I was partners with Harry. The third person of our little triangle was Jay Johnson, the ventriloquist from Soap, if people remember Jay. And Jay and Fred were neighbors. So I've seen Fred a few times. He was on Guffman, but I've also run into Fred a few times over the years. Probably the nicest, sweetest guy in Hollywood. I mean, there were a lot of tears cried when Fred went.
Yeah, and Fred was acting for, it seemed like forever, at least 40 years. I remember as a kid him on Three's Company playing love interest to Janet. And I mean, that was back in the early 70s, but very funny, very gifted actor, and yeah, a tough loss. So Turk, talk a little bit about the Nobility Project and some of the fine work you've done with that.
So there's a Sopranos connection here. I was trying to make a documentary about global issues. I know this seems like a kind of an odd stretch for the kind of work I was doing, but for a long time I was trying to find the money to make this documentary that ended up being called Nobility, and interviews with 9 Nobel laureates, which included Desmond Tutu and Wangari Maathai, the first African woman to win a Nobel Prize, won the Nobel Peace Prize. So I was trying to find a way to raise the money to make this film. And when I got cast in The Sopranos, I ended up around the same time. I flew to New York with a friend for a film festival, for a screening at a film festival up there, and started talking to him about the movie. And he said, I'd invest in this movie. I love the idea of this movie, you know, to get the smartest people in the world and look at what's wrong and what we could do about it is my kind of thing. So suddenly I had the money and I was shooting on The Sopranos. So I would spend a lot of my time at The Sopranos going to the sound department, the camera department, the lighting guys, and saying, okay, I got a problem. I'm shooting this film all over the world. I'm going to occasionally have a second camera person. I'm going to occasionally have one lighting person or one sound person. Sometime I'm going to have nobody. It's just going to be me. Well, today we have this equipment. I mean, you can go on an iPhone, you can shoot movies like this, but the equipment you worked with back then was bigger, and you needed lighting, you need better sound. And everybody on the crew at The Sopranos would say, no, I don't think you can do it, Turk. You know, that's a tall order. You're talking about shooting in India and in Bangladesh and in Nepal and in Africa. And I don't see you're going to be able to do it solo. And I said, well, just assume I have to do it solo. So I had a lot of great guidance from some of the best production team in America on The Sopranos. The movie came out, premiered at South Nobility, it's called, premiered at South by Southwest, world premiere. We won an award there, played film festivals, had distribution with Mark Cuban's company. Made a second movie about solutions, shot that one in 27 countries, one piece at a time. And then somewhere along the way, the problem of education kind of rose to the top, and the idea of you're really supposed to not just tell stories, you're supposed to be part of the solutions to these stories. And some of that came from Willie. Willie is in One Piece at a Time. I interviewed him at his Western movie town, Luck, Texas. We played a game of chess. And while we played chess, we talked about how Willie lives his life. And I just said, you know, you use biodiesel on your bus, you eat organic food, you support farmers, you know, everything you do in your life is something you seem to have thought through about how it affects the world. And Willie, one of the things Willie said was in the interview is he said, you know, right and wrong's not that hard. We all know right and wrong. It's what we choose to do. And so we ended up, the Nobility Project, my wife and I, getting really involved in education. A lot of our work is in East Africa and Kenya, but we've worked all over the world, and there's a lot of problems, education problems in this country. We work in this country too. It's not all just some international charity work, but we've built all or part of about 50 schools in Kenya, public schools, all in rural Kenya, where kids, you know, the place where we built high schools, there were no high schools. And it's been fantastic. We've had to raise a lot of money to do it, and we've had a lot of support. Some of those support comes from people who are my fans from The Sopranos, or from my books, or from other things. Austin, Texas in general has been really good to us. Willie's been really good to us. I just got back from Kenya, and you see the rhino back behind me there on the shelf. We work with Old Pejeta Conservancy in Kenya. We have some conservation partners around the world as well. And Old Pejeta is the place where the last two northern white rhinos on Earth live. And there is an enormously ambitious effort to create and save the species through in vitro fertilization. And so that's my constant reminder of the Old Pejeta program. But it's been fun. We're at nobility.org. It's spelled like Nobel laureate, Nobelity. And there's a ton of video there, and on our Facebook page, people can watch. You know, you don't have to pitch in, you can just go see the work we do and enjoy it. We're happy. It's not really all about raising money. It's really just about inspiring people sometimes to just go pick an issue that matters to them and then do what they can on that issue.
So again, folks, if you're listening to the recorded version or on live now, it's nobility.org to learn more information about how to support and donate. Turk is doing God's work for sure. So we thank you for that. Turk, next question. You've got some interesting pieces behind you there. That red book over your shoulder, if that's what that is, I'm a little bit curious what in fact that book is.
That is, boy, it's hard to point in a mirror. that is Algonquin Books. That's the original hardcover edition of When Angels Sing, which is a Christmas novel that I wrote. really sweet book. Great publishing story with that one. I wrote the book more than 20 years, about 20 years ago, just a little over, for my two daughters and my family. I just wanted to write a book. I'd always wanted to write a Christmas book, and I wanted to write a little Christmas story for my family for Christmas. And I printed 50 hand-bound copies of this book. Looked really nice. They were stitched together with ribbon, the binding. And I had done a book for Peter Workman, who's a legend in the book publishing industry. Workman Publishing do all kinds of wonderful books over the years, and they have a cookbook division, and they also at the time owned Algonquin Books of Chapel Hill, a great Southern literary publishing house. And I had a couple extra copies of this book, When Angels Sing, and I sent a copy to Peter and said, I thought you'd like this book. And I think he got it on Christmas Eve, and he called me on Christmas Day and said, I just read this book, and it's not real long, and I just read the book and I love it. Can I walk it over to Shannon, who runs Algonquin? And so I literally made 50 hand-bound copies, and a week later I had a deal with one of my favorite publishers in America to release the book the following Christmas. And we ended up making a movie out of the book, shot in Austin. The title was changed to Angels Sing instead of When Angels Sing, but it's very much the story. Willie plays a guy named Nick, who may or may not be Saint Nick. And we had an incredible cast. Had Chris Christopherson, Harry Connick Jr., Connie Britton, and a kind of a who's who of Texas musicians playing various parts in this movie. It's a sweet movie, Angels Sing, but the book's a good one too. It's just one of those real fun kind of magic publishing stories. And if you want a guy to play Santa Claus, you can't do better than Willie.
No, you sure can.
And he is always, this is another thing I've known, and I had seen Willie play Santa for his kids. His two youngest boys grew up around the same time and were close with our two daughters. So I had been at the family Christmas party where Willie would come in. He didn't really pad it out. He would wear a red Santa suit, and he originally used to wear a white wig, but after a while he didn't have to wear the white wig anymore, the white beard. And he would come play Santa for his family with a big bag. He loves Christmas, and he wrote that beautiful song, Pretty Paper. And so it was a natural to say, well, if I wrote a Christmas story, you couldn't beat Willie being in it.
So what's next? What now that things are easing up and we're getting towards, hopefully, the end of this pandemic, any possibilities of another book following this with Willie, or other projects that you're working on at the moment?
I'd love to do another book with Willie. I mean, we've done two, and I don't think anybody, Willie's had several really great books. I don't think anybody's done two with him. And, he's smart. He's like, I could write this book with Turk and we're going to get it done faster. And he still puts, an amazing amount of there's no book without Willie. There could be a book without me. I mean, that's one way to look at the idea of having a co-author. But that'll be, we'll see when Willie and I have some time to sit down together and talk it over. But I'm always working on a book. I'm working on a novel that isn't ready to shop yet, but I've been probably been on for the last 6 months. And every time I think I've got it licked, I end up going back and reading Stephen King's own writing and going, something I'm missing here. Which is, if any writers out there, you should, if you don't know that book by Stephen King, it is a really wonderful guide to creative spirit of writing. But and Nobility Project's full speed ahead. I just got back from Kenya for the first time in 15 months. Opened a bunch of new school projects and kicked off some more. We have built several new libraries. That's the libraries are really fun. The preschools and the libraries we build over there are some of the most fun. We're just because you talk about kids that don't have access to books, and we just opened a library in the very famous Masai Mara region of Kenya, where the Great Migration takes place, and it's surrounded by Maasai communities. And one of the school districts down there has 58 rural schools in their district, and we built a library at this little school called Old Miyashia, which I love the school so much. Beautiful, beautiful choir that the kids have at this school, as in most schools in Kenya. But the district education officer was there for the opening and got up to speak and said, there are 58 schools in my district, and this is the only one with a library. And that makes you feel pretty good, but it also makes you think, oh, there's 57 schools that need libraries. So.
Absolutely. So one last question, and we're going to take a shot on this one. With your close relationship with Willie, did you ever have any interactions with the legendary Highwaymen, the other members of the Highwaymen?
I did. I knew all those guys. Christy, my wife Christy, who founded the Nobility Project with me, she produced a movie in Spain, shot in Almeria, Spain, on the Sergio Leone, the spaghetti western sets down there, with Willie and Chris. And Johnny was not in that one. Johnny Cash not in that one. Waylon was. It was, I think, the last thing Waylon ever shot. He couldn't actually get to Spain. He wasn't healthy enough. And I think Christy ended up building a piece of the set in their backyard, in Waylon's backyard in Tennessee, and getting Waylon shots to put into the movie that way. But we've known Chris really well. I've known Chris for a long time. He's another person who's a great influence on my life. I was a college freshman when his album, his Silver Tongue Devil and I album came out, and I bought a copy of it. And I'm pretty sure that a couple of days later, by chance, I saw Steve Martin, the comedian. I saw Steve Martin open for Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, and I met Steve Martin, and I'd been listening to Chris Christopherson, and I met Steve Martin. I think the next day I quit school. Like, I don't know what I'm doing in school, but I want to do what those guys are doing. And Chris recently retired. I wrote a big story about Chris for Esquire, a big story about Chris 5 years ago, I guess. Beautiful story. I think it's a beautiful story, which kind of tells his whole epic saga. But the end of the story at the time was Chris was having a lot of memory problems, like severe memory problems. And the doctors believed it was they're caused by concussions when he was a Golden Gloves boxer and when he was a football player. And the medicine wasn't helping, and it was really worrisome. And but not long after that story came out, Chris and Lisa, his wife, they got a new diagnosis and learned that Chris had Lyme disease. He'd gotten while he was shooting a film, action film, crawling through the grass, and he got a tick bite, and he got Lyme disease. When they put him on the treatment for Lyme disease, his mind snapped back because he's a super smart guy. And so he's retired and got a lot of kids and grandkids, and just think the world of him as well. So.
Oh, yeah, that's great. And I didn't realize he retired. I mean, I hope he's still writing music.
I haven't talked to him since he announced the retirement. I mean, he really said, I'm going to retire. They have this beautiful house in Hana and Maui, and he has a big family. I think he earned the retirement. It's interesting. The Chris saga is really interesting. It goes around in circles because A Star Is Born, we talk about Willie just recorded with Barbara. Well, Willie, I think, first met Barbara Streisand, spent time with her, hung out with her on the original set of A Star Is Born when Chris and Barbara were making A Star Is Born. And then, of course, the Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga Star Is Born, which came out a couple of years ago. Bradley Cooper's band, the band leader, and has also co-wrote, I think, 6 or 7 songs on the album, is Lucas Nelson, Willie's son. So those circles go around. Lucas is an incredible artist, and anybody who's out there who doesn't know his music should look into it.
Yeah, I'm familiar. I'm very much familiar. Well, thank you, Turk. I mean, this has been great. Once again, everyone, this is a phenomenal book. It's an easy read. Some parts are incredibly moving, and I'm going to turn it back over to Pat and Walter. But again, let's support our local independent bookstores. Let's also support Turk and get this book on the bestseller list.
There you go.
Yeah.
Turk, we had a question. Is there a couple questions? Is there a specific letter here that was stuck out, that was unusual, that perhaps you didn't know about Willie, or something unique of all the letters that are in this book?
There's some that surprised me. I mean, I'm looking at in my copy here where I've marked a few things. Some of the ones that surprised me, which ended up being in there, there's a letter to Will Rogers, okay? And I knew that Willie had told me, and years ago we were talking one time, and he told me, oh yeah, when I was a kid, I used to listen to Will Rogers on the radio, and it really meant a lot to me. And his whole sense of humor and joke telling and everything, and it made sense. We wrote a letter to several of Willie's heroes, and to Jimmy Carter, one who's still alive. They're very close friends. To Gene Autry, who the highwaymen all revered as their childhood hero. And but I asked Willie about, would you want to write a letter to Will Rogers? And Willie, you told me once you used to listen to him, and Willie said, yeah, it's interesting because when I was listening to him, Will Rogers was dead. They were replays, reruns of his radio shows. And I was a young kid. I would turn on the radio. I think Will Rogers died when Willie was 2, in 1935, when Will Rogers died. So I was listening to Will Rogers, but it was like he was talking to me from heaven. And I said, oh, let's write a letter to Will Rogers in heaven. And we'll say, we don't know if you're going to get this, but the two of us started working on this letter, and then we had got about halfway through it, we were really liking it. And then the question came up, was like, is Will Rogers going to write back? And we were asking him questions, and one of the questions was, you once said you suspected there were dogs in heaven. Can you let us know? And so we were like, well, yeah, if we can write to Will Rogers in heaven, Will Rogers can write back. And it's one of my favorite kind of surprises in the book.
That's great.
That's
It sounds like
And Will Rogers says, yes, I'm happy to report I was right.
very good.
Well, that's great. Greg, a great interview.
Yeah.
Turk, really nice.
Yeah.
Now we are coming to the point where we have to pick the 2 winners. There are only 2 signed books of the 10 in the country.
Yeah.
So Pat, I'm going to ask you to
pull it out. I'm not looking. I just.
Oh, I
Drum
hope-
roll, please.
Not doing
It
that.
better not be Turk or Greg.
I'm gonna open it. See,
Okay,
what do we got for you? Open
Winner of
it.
the first book, which
Sticking
we
it-
will
which
ship
is
you
sticking
this
together
when we
here.
receive them.
You help me out there. Sorry, someone used
Drum
a
roll.
sticky note and it's sticking together here.
David with a K. We won't give out the last name. David K is the winner of one of the signed books.
Yep.
Hey, congratulations.
I will.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's special, to say the least. All right, here we go. Second
Okay,
one
the other
is-
winner is. There's a lot of sticky.
A lot of
security.
sticky notes. They're
These
really.
are these are rare. Well, he doesn't do. He used to stand at the front of his for most of his life. He'd finish his show. He'd stand at the front of the stage. He'd sign autographs for hours. But when you're 88 years old and you're touring, you got to play guitar every night. You got to make a choice. Am I
Gotta
going to
do
play guitar or
Okay,
am I going to sign autographs? So these are really rare.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other winner is Carol C.
Yes.
Carol with the
With the
last
letter C.
So congratulations to those
all of
2
you.
signed book winners.
Yes.
And again, Turk, really interesting interview.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming on. And Greg, thank you for interviewing Turk.
My pleasure. Thank you,
Everybody,
Turk.
support bookends, support the independent bookstores. America needs them.
Oh,
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you so much. Great to
Everybody
meet
out
you.
there, Bookends fans and friends, thanks for joining us. And we will be taping this
Yep.
and making it available. Anybody that missed it tonight, just give us a call. So thanks
Great.
again for everybody out there, and thank you guys.
Thank
Appreciate
Good night,
it.
everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Greg.
Have a great evening.
Great evening.
Bye-bye.